Hi viewers, welcome to the channel. This video is inspired by one of the problems that one of my patrons are having with their current project. So they're trying to get text on a complex object. Now this isn't the object, but hopefully this will help them in trying to fix that issue and help others out there. Now there's many ways of placing text on objects. You can use the lattice workbench if you've got something complex. The curve on surface. You can even get down to the point where you're extracting out the individual text and placing them around the object manually, which is quite time consuming. So placing text on the object and indenting that in or cutting that in. One way to do it is, first of all, let's make sure that our loft, we can see this is made out of a loft. We've got to make sure that's solid. You can see through there at the moment. This only works because we're using Boolean operations on solid models. So set the solid in the data to true. Same with a revolve as well in the part. You need to make that solid. Now I'm going to use the curves workbench, but you'll see a bit of an issue because we're going to try to extract out the whole of this surface. But there's two surfaces for starters. So try the sketch on surface. And you can see that we've got this sketch on surface here, but double click it, it's not really taken. It's only taken one part of that surface as well. If you look at that map sketch, we come down, it's only taken loft face 3, which is this one, the first one we selected. So I'm going to delete that, get rid of that, and sketch on surface. One way of doing this is to supply basically an invisible surface or a fake surface in there. So first we need to create a surface. Now this is where the offset and join curves come in quite handy. Let's have a look what we got. So if I want to place text around this way, I could, for instance, take this edge and this edge. Let's first hide the sketches. So we've got a sketch there and a sketch there, so we'll hide those for the time being, just hide those, and I'll take this edge and this edge, and we can see a little edge here as well. We don't need that. So these are going to be the edges that I'm going to use for extrude. So first we've got to join them. Let's come up to the join curves. Let's join them as one curve, so we hide that, we can see that curve in there. If I take that curve, come over to the part workbench and we'll extrude that using the extrude. We're looking to extrude it along whatever axis goes this way, which is the y-axis. So make sure we've got the y-axis selected and we set some length. We hit OK. So now we've got this ribbon and let's have a look at the loft. So we can see how that sits on there. Now we've extruded out the wrong way, so it's extruded this way. Let's extrude the other way. Take that extrude, and we can either go reverse or just place a minus in that one, and that's gone into that model like so. And you notice that edge sits right there. It's cut into the model. What this allows me to do, if I hide the loft again, is that I can use this single surface now over in the curves workbench by clicking on it and using the sketch on surface, and we can see that we have a map sketch that sits on that surface. At the moment it's the wrong size, so you see that this width here is just 1mm. It's pushing that away 1mm from there. So we need to understand how long this is. And if we close that, and I've done other videos about this, but we just use the geom information and we can select an edge. That will give us a length of 166.819, so 167. And we can come over to the map sketch, come in and change that one there. It's 1mm, the length of this, to 167. We now have that. Now it's a good idea at this point to add a rectangle in here. So what I'm doing is just adding a rectangle. This gives me some reference of where the text will be placed, because as you can see, the outside of this is construction geometry, and placing that in there, hit escape and just bring this down a bit. If I hit close, you can see that's been added to that ribbon. The whole idea is to use text extruded from that ribbon through this surface to allow me to make the cut in there. So let's come back into the map sketch, and we can see how that's placed on there, and you can see if I close that how that's been placed upon here, like so, all the way up to the top. The reason why we do this is because if we click on the map sketch and press the space bar, we get this rectangle here, and our text will go in here, and then we'll remove the rectangle. If you don't have this rectangle, you have no idea where the text is going to sit. Let's come over to the draft workbench. We have our sketch, we have our grid. Now I'm going to come up to the drafting and use a shape from text. So we need to load in our font file. This will differ if you're on Windows or Linux. So I'm in my fonts directory and I pick a font and hit open. We can set the height and the string. So I'm going to put testing text in here, and we'll place it, say, in here for the time being, and hit OK. So we've got our testing text. We can come into the shape string and change the size, bring it down, and just either click off or use your Control R, or if you're on Windows, the refresh key. I think it's F5 to refresh. And we've got our text there. We need to move it. So click on the shape string and move that, and decide by clicking on it, deciding where it's going to go. So I'm going to place it around about the middle there. Now we've got that text on there, that shape string. We need to attach it to this rectangle. Click on the sketch on surface, not the map sketch. And what you'll find is you'll have this extra objects. So this one here, if you scroll down, click on that, you get a button, and you can pick the shape string and hit OK. When we click off, it will be added to this model. So you can see it's been added there. We now need to get rid of the lines. So come into that map sketch, and we need to delete these white lines. So delete them. This one here. And this one. Don't delete the outside lines, these construction geometry, otherwise it will crash the cursed workbench, and hit close. We've got testing text there, and it's on our object. But there's a bit of a problem. As you can see, it's round the wrong way. And that's to do with the UV. So we come into the sketch on surface. If we scroll down, we can see reverse U, reverse V. And we just set one of these to true and see what happens. And you can see that's been changed and positioned around the other way. If it's not in the right position, then we can change the shape string. And for instance, I want to rotate that a bit, so I can click on the shape string and use the rotate, and then click, say, up to this point, draw a line, and if we just move, we can just rotate that into position, and it will take effect on here. Don't worry about it spilling over this. It's not a problem. We can either move this down. The minute we go on to that sketch on surface and look down at the fill extrusion, which is set to true, fill faces, so that's true. Click off, that will take effect, and then we can start adding some thickness. So let's add 3 on the thickness, and that's extruded that upwards. Now let's bring back our loft, and we can see how that's been fitted to there. With this, we need to transform the sketch on surface. If we transform this extrude, that doesn't actually transform. So right click, transform, and we can move that into position. And what will happen is, well, it will start to disappear into the model. So to solve that, we can either change the rotation of this. So for instance, we can see this curves upwards this way, or we can change the offset, the thickness, etc. So I change the offset to say to 1. This will offset this object like so, and then we can come into the sketch on surface, right click, transform, and just rotate this. So I'm going to take the rotation increments off and just set that down to 1 degree, as I want to just move this slightly, and we'll move that into position. And you'll see that sometimes that even with this technique, you'll get some problems, which we'll just need to figure out the right position for this text. So something like that. There we go. And then hit OK. Once that's on there, we could use Boolean techniques against that to include it into the model, or we can use compounding techniques. For instance, if we just want this line on top, I can take the outside. I've still got the geom information on, so over in the curves workbench, let's turn that off. That's better. And come back to the part workbench, and I can take loft and this sketch on surface, come up to the part, compound, make compound. So there's a compounded together. That means if I take that compound and come to file and export that, and I'm just going to export it as an STL file. So file types STL, and save that. File, import, and bring in the STL. What you'll see if I hide the compound and all these objects, we've got that STL file there, and we've got that text upon there without doing any Boolean operations against that. So we can do it that way. Let's delete that compound and come back to where we was. Or we're confusing it, or if I want to take it away, click the one we want to keep, control click the one we want to remove, this sketch on surface, and do a cut. And there we have it, cut into the object. So let's say this isn't really working for us, and the extrude is in the wrong place. So we created that extrude there. I've just deleted the cut. And if we look inside, we can see how that extrude sits upon there. And what we really needed is basically the extrude, but we need to bring this inwards. We could use in the part workbench, click on that extrude and use the offset. So part 3D offset, and use a minus value in here. So let's say -5. We can bring this right in here. Don't fill the offset, just hit OK. And then we use that face instead of this one and hide that. So that's the extrude hidden. We use the offset to create the text upon like we did before. So that gives us a way of actually placing that further in the model. It's popped out the other side, but we have some adjustments on that. So -3. And you can see that's sitting inside that model now. And we can use that for our basis of this sketch on surface. So let's have a look at another problem. Let's say we didn't have any edges to create a guidance extrude across here. So before we took this edge and use a join curve over in the curves workbench. If we didn't have any lines to place along here, or have been placed along here, what do we do? Well, this is where a nice little tool in the part workbench comes in handy. Let's click that loft. And what I'm going to do is actually delete that sketch on the surface, that map sketch. I'm just going to leave the shape string there. And what I'm going to do is use that loft. Let's get rid of this extrude as well. So click on the loft, go up to part, and come over to cross sections. So this one here. This will throw some guidance lines around here. So for instance, we got it positioned one single one there. Let's come down to sections and bring this count up. So we can bring in a number of cross sections there. And we can place them along any axis. Also place on both sides, so using on both sides there. And we can decide from this where we want our line. Also can position them using the position and deciding where they go. We only need one line, so if I'm going this way, I can come in and hit OK, and we get these lines around here. So this gives me an option to place something along here. Remember, if we got that cross section, it is not parametric, so we have to do it again. So delete that and click on that loft, come up to the part, come up to the cross sections, and you can see we've got one going this way now, so we can increase the sections there like so, and we can change what axis we want those along there. And say we want it along this axis, along the top. If we want it on the bottom, we can use on both sides, etc. And just hit OK. Now we've got those cross sections, we can use one of these. So come into the loft, and what we've got is the cross sections on both sides, as you can see there. We need to divide these off. So these are actually a compound. We can use compound tools to divide these off. So we're in the part, cut to part, compound, and explode compound. We've exploded those in there, so you can see each of these sitting there. And then we just pick which one we want. So if I pick this one, it's number 6. Actually, let's go for number 5. I can delete all the others. So just left with 5. Therefore, we've got an edge to work with. So let's hide that loft, and you can see that edge there. Now that's a single edge, so I can take that loft and explode it once again. So that edge there, explode it once again. Or I can come over to the curves workbench and do what we did before. So clicking on that, using the join curve. So we go join curve in there, and then using that join curve over in the part workbench to create an extrude along an axis. So we're going along the Z, this one here, Z, and we can choose which way it's going to go. Got 10 millimeters, hit OK, and therefore we've created a surface that we can add a sketch on. Come back to the loft, we can see that in there, like so, and I can place a sketch on that and push it out this way. So I hope that's helped. That's one way of getting that text on that surface, using the curves on surface. As I said, a number of other ways of doing it via the lattice workbench, doing it manually. There's a lot of tools in the lattice workbench. But I found that I can get good results from the curves on surface in the curves workbench. You'll have to install that from the add-on manager if you don't know about that. But I hope that gives you a way of getting around some of your problems. Thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you again soon. If you like what you're seeing, please subscribe to the site. I also have a Ko-Fi or a Ko-Fi site that you can donate to if you so desire, and that's at ko-fi.com/MANG0. I also run a Patreon where you can subscribe and get extra content, and that's at www.patreon.com/MangoJellySolutions. Any money that's kindly donated will be used to expand the channel. Thanks a lot for watching and subscribing, and I'll see you again soon.